And welcome back. Let's go ahead and work on addressing our wall jump issue. First thing I want to do is, of course, make sure that with my player object, I did make some changes last time. I forgot to make sure that these overrides that I did, because of course I made changes to it, I will go ahead and hit apply all here. So those are saved to this player object, because again, remember we're editing the prefab here. So very important to make sure that we have that adjusted accordingly. Now, the challenge for us to do is to think, how can we get this player to stop going off this? Now, I'm going to go ahead and give this to you in the form of a little mini challenge, and I'm going to, of course, show you how to do this. But the hint I'm going to give you is that we want to actually use a collider, or a second collider for a player object, that really represents the player's feet, if you will, that is going to look to see if it needs to hit that wall or not. So let's go ahead and think about that. I'm going to go ahead and tell you, pause the video with that hint. Do you think that you can go ahead and code that on your own? But if not, it's okay. We'll go through it here in just a second. All right, so let's go ahead and address how we can do this. The first thing we want to do is set up another collider. And of course, I got all this kind of stuff hanging out here on my player. So we've got to work around our gizmos here. You, of course, can take these and minimize them and stuff like that. But I'm not super worried about it, because what we're going to do is we're going to take our player here, make sure all overrides are applied, because what we actually want to do is go into the prefab itself and make some changes. And I'm going to go down to the bottom here. We're actually going to collapse my rigid body so it's out of the way. And we already have a capsule collider which kind of dictates this part of the player. But we want to go ahead and add in here now a box collider 2D. So let's go ahead and add that in. And we want to edit that collider. So let's just go ahead and drag that down. And I'm going to zoom in here just so I can see the existing capsule collider. So what I want to do is bring the sides of this in, so that way they are inside the capsule collider. All right, even though my feet borderline might extend out just a little bit, I want to make sure this is inside, because we don't want this to be in such a manner that the capsule collider is overridden by this box collider. So again, I'm just going to drag that in just a little bit here, so we can kind of have that be inside of that capsule collider. Again, you want the capsule collider to have that first point of contact, not the box collider. All right, that looks pretty good there. So if we back out and look at our player object now, it should have that box collider applied to it, and we don't have to do that override because we went right into the prefab and made that change. And so now let's go over into our code to actually code that collider so it functions the way we want to. And of course, we have our capsule collider, which is set up here, so we can actually just add our box collider right underneath this, so box collider 2D, and we'll call this one our player box collider. And of course, we could call it player feet or whatever you want, but player box collider is perfectly fine. And we want to make sure we, of course, set it up in a very similar way that we did our last collider. So here we said we wanted to get that component. So guess what we need to do? We need to get that component. So let's go ahead and do the player box collider and have that equal to a get component of a box collider 2D. Because again, this is going to pull that value in that what we want it to use. Now, what we're going to do is actually just change a little bit of things here. So if we come down to our existing code, we have two things that use the player capsule collider, which was the player capsule collider here for the climb ladder, which we can now change to the player box collider. And of course, the other thing was, if we came down just a little bit further, we had this in our on jump. And you can see we have our player capsule again, so let's change that to the player box. And again, we're doing this because these are the bottom of the player that's going to actually be looking to see if these values are true. All right, so with those changes made, let's go ahead and take our player character here and see if they're going to behave the way we want them to. So let's go ahead and find a nice wall to go ahead and interact with. So here's our wall, and so now I'm going to try to double jump. I can no longer double jump. Again, even though I changed that to a box collider, that box collider is still attached to this player character, so it's still going to have that same kind of behavior we expect. And let's just make sure that we didn't break anything. Good, our jump mechanic, or bounce mechanic, I should say, is still working. Jump is working just well. So everything appears to be working perfectly well. And again, here's a longer wall. You can see I can no longer stick to it. I'm not able to double jump, even though I'm smashing my space bar right now. So again, everything is working really good. So we've cleaned things up very nicely for our player character. And now we are ready to start looking at the next step, which is adding maybe some enemies to our game.